Hey everyone, I'm just going to read an article, so I'm sure you're already aware of, or at least anyone that's paying attention, right? I'm sure you're already aware that Maxime Bernier, well, they had that event at Mohawk College with Dave Rubin there as a special guest. Shout out to Dave Rubin, shout out to Maxime, and thanks to both of you for doing such a great job on putting that event, and thanks to Dave for stepping up and ponying the cash out of his own pocket to pay for security because of the threats from these far left groups. Far left. Antifa, that's the thing. They love to describe themselves as anti-fascist, but in reality, like I say, these people, they project. Everything they accuse their opponents of, you just need to recognize that what they're really doing is projecting their own internal biases and their own authoritarian mindsets onto other people. That's what they're doing, folks. Make no mistake about it. But I just wanted to, like I say, I just wanted to cover this, and you've already probably seen the video footage of that, 80-something-year-old lady trying to walk across the street to get into the event at Mohawk College. Yeah, they had these Antifa protesters, right? People that are trying to shut down and silence people, right? That's what they're trying to do. And they're so emboldened that they're willing to obstruct a woman 80 something years, I think 81 years old, and her husband, another older gentleman, from even going to that event. And calling and screaming at them at the top of their lungs, yelling at them and calling them Nazis or white supremacists. I mean, what would this frail older lady in her 80s and her husband, what kind of threat do they genuinely represent? Really, this is the insanity of the modern world that we live in today, where people acting peacefully, just going out to enjoy an event and listen to people speak about defending freedom of speech and defending rights, freedoms, and liberties, are silenced or shut down or have bully tactics imposed upon them by a bunch of these so-called Antifa. Like I say, most of these people, if you rip the mask off these people, I'm pretty sure a lot of them are a bunch of entitled dipshits whose parents work for big government. How much you want to bet? In some capacity, I guarantee a lot of these Antifa activists are the children of entitled elitists who represent the ruling class in this country. The status quo, the establishment. I don't make many predictions or many claims that I don't have genuine knowledge on, but I would definitely step outside my comfort zone and say that, like I say, most of these people, these Antifa dipshits, mark my words, these are people who truly do come from a position of entitlement. Of that, I'm fairly certain. I mean, even with the video evidence and how that all unfolded, the hacks of the CBC are still willing to present this kind of narrative in their publication. Headline out of CBC News, Hamilton, more arrests possible as police review video evidence from Bernier rally clashes. Hamilton police are collecting video evidence and further charges may be pending. It's been reported by Christine Rankin, September 30th, 2019. Hamilton police say more arrests are possible as they scour video evidence in the wake of a protest outside a rally by People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier, which saw a number of violent clashes outside the event. About 100 people had gathered to support or protest against the fundraiser for the party held Saturday evening at Mohawk College, and 4 people, 2 each from the opposing sides, were arrested for breach of the peace. Police on Monday specifically cited a widely distributed video that showed an elderly woman and her companion being blocked from entering the venue and yelled at by protesters. The image of the woman and video of the incident had been broadly shared across social media, particularly with PPC supporters decrying Antifa, anti-fascist protesters for their actions. Couldn't go any lower, said one retweet. What a disgrace, said another. Well, you notice how so far we haven't even got down into the meat of the article yet, but already CBC, right, is doing their damage control and defending these Antifa by pointing out when they say decrying Antifa, but they anti-fascist, and they're protesters, right? Nothing to suggest that they're far left or extreme left or leftist in any way. No, just anti-fascist protesters. They're just protesting, folks. Nothing to see here. Just concerned citizens, right? Police have now said they are aware of the incident and that while officers did not witness the initial confrontation, they said once officers saw what was happening, some intervened and escorted the woman and her companion into the building. Alice Smith, one of the organizers of the event, told CBC Hamilton that the actions by those in the video toward the elderly couple did not reflect the views held by the majority of protesters. So once again, CBC putting that in there, right? Defensive posturing and language is what they're trying to emphasize here, right? Oh no, they were just they weren't trying to impede these poor old people. They were just doing their civic duty, protesting against those damn people that are proponents of free speech and liberty. And you'll see what the liberals or so-called liberals or the leftists that represent the CBC, you'll see how they'll try to portray proponents of freedom of speech or PPC supporters. A little further down in the article. I have never seen the people blocking the woman before last night, she said. Well, they all had masks on, really? How do you know that? They're all wearing masks. Well, you can see through that? Well, no one else can. If I had been there at that spot at that moment, I would have stepped in to stop it because that wasn't what we're there for. She also added that people were there to protest against a particular ideology, more so than a single person. And what is that ideology? You won't hear that in this particular article. Why? Because, once again, what the ideology of liberty, of individual freedom, of individual rights, of freedom of speech, all those things that Western societies are built upon? Is that what these protesters are protesting? Yeah. And apparently the CBC reporter wants to convey that message that they're not online with freedom of speech or individual liberty either. I mean, at the very least, shouldn't they say what that ideology is? Kojo Damptey, program manager at the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion, HCCI, was also at the college for the start of the protest. He stressed that the moment with the elderly couple was a distraction from the protest. I don't think that harassing old folks and people that have disabilities is a good thing, he said. But to talk about that one incident is a distraction from why we were even there. Well, why were you there? I'm waiting to hear. Hopefully that information will be conveyed in this article. If they, PPC, weren't allowed to speak at Mohawk, that wouldn't have happened, he said. I think people should be focused on the reason why residents need to come out. So, yeah, if the PPC weren't allowed to have their free speech event, which was all peaceful, all built on voluntary interactions and engagements, right? If only we could shut down and silence these people, well, we wouldn't have to come out there and bully a bunch of elderly people. That's what I'm taking from this message. I don't know about yourself, but that's what I'm hearing from this message. And CBC seems very comfortable with reporting it in that manner, which tells you a whole lot about the entitled mentality of CBC contributors as well. Councillor or Count Jean-Paul Danko, Ward 8, councillor, was also present as a protester. He said the atmosphere was volatile and that other groups' presence, like the Love and the Hammer Choir, helped bring it back to being a protest and not a confrontation. And then look at this. History of far-right protests. Far-right protests? There were no far-right people protesting, right? What is this? Where's the history of far-left protests, right? Once again, complete distortion. Like I say, I totally understand now, well, I've understood for a long time why Canadians are so confused and confounded about things, what's happening out there in the social and economic sphere, or when it comes to the media or the political or ruling classes, because, they get non-stop ridiculous rhetoric such as this. Peter Grafe, a political science professor at McMaster University, said the photo and video of the moment was one of vulnerability and could be used to frame the situation. Gee, you think? That's a powerful image if you want to tell a story of this being some all-powerful Antifa preventing the free expression of ideas and being so afraid of ideas that they wouldn't even let an elderly woman come and hear them, he said. Well, duh. It frames it as one of free speech, and who's the problem standing in the way? These people that came to protest it. He also said the clashes reflect a reality in Hamilton where different people are competing for space for their voices. It's an ongoing situation where far-right white nationalists, some might call them Nazi groups, are trying to make space in the city, he said. Other organizations are saying, no, this isn't part of civic discourse. These aren't people who are really interested in liberal rights and free speech. They need to be pushed out of the city. Like I say, folks, just repeat that back yourself. I won't waste time doing it myself to keep the video fairly short here, but just think about what is said in that paragraph alone, right? So contradictory in nature. But that's the thing. These people don't give a... Ideologues don't care about being consistent or principled anyway. They only care about offering that red meat to their base. Once again, another tactic or rhetoric they use to point out their political opponents. When in reality, the reason why they point that stuff out is because that is their go-to game. That's the way they play. That's something they know very well. He cited protests against the Soldiers of Odin Hamilton chapter and the Proud Boys Patriot Walk down Locke Street, incidents at the city's Pride Festival, and ongoing issues at City Hall with Yellow Vest protesters. The far right has come to Hamilton in a way it hasn't come to other places, he said. And while Grave said that the PPC itself is not a hate organization, he explains that its existence is a change in Canada's political ecology, and in Hamilton in particular, he said there is a long-term discussion about the acceptability or non-acceptability of far-right organizations. Acceptability? What? What's that mean? You got to wipe them out? You got to kill them? You're going to deny them their ability to speak freely or to live in this country? Is that what you're saying? That sounds very authoritarian, right? Very much so. The party said 600 people paid $50 to attend the event, which was scheduled before the election began. Bernie appeared on stage with Dave Rubin, an American YouTuber and political commentator. When CBC Windsor on Monday asked Bernie about the Hamilton protest, he stressed the importance of protesting peacefully. Shame to not have free speech, Bernie says. It's a shame that in this country you cannot have a politician speak freely and you have a protest, he said. I'm not against people who will protest peacefully. That's the most important. But protesting with a mask and, trying to stop people from entering into the building, that's not the Canadian way. When asked about whether he had anything to say to his supporters who were arrested, Bernie responded that all the people were inside the building, that they share the party's values and are very peaceful people. Mohawk College spokesman Bill Steinberg stood by the school's previous comment to CBC Hamilton that the party is a part of the federal dialogue. He added that this event had been booked before the writ dropped. We recognize that people have the opportunity to protest, to voice their concerns, but no one has a free hand to break the law, he said. When asked what Mohawk College has to say to people expressing that the PPC event shouldn't have happened, Steinberg said that we regularly have members of varying political parties visiting us on campus. We don't afford the PPC any more accommodation than we would any other political party. With files from CBC's Justin Mowat and Samantha Craigs. So anyways, folks, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. And in addition to that, but like I say, listen to the way that this was covered by the CBC, by this CBC contributor. I mean, if it had been flipped upside down, right, where supposed far right, the Soldiers of Odin, or any of these people that these groups that they suggest are far right, if they were there to suppress or silence or prevent, the liberals from gathering around or rallying around to support each other or talk or express themselves freely in any particular venue, or the conservatives or the Antifa, you're not hearing any of this, right? Where are you hearing where these supposed far right groups are trying to silence or suppress people when they go to their liberal or progressive conservative or New Democratic or Green Party rallies? You're not hearing any of that. Why? Why? Because, obviously the people that are being portrayed as fascists or far right, the people who are supporters of the People's Party candidate, are anything even remotely resembling how the media is portraying them. No, it's only those who are challenging the status quo or the ruling class who are seemingly having their voices denied or suppressed on a continual ongoing basis. And it shouldn't require too much intellect, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out why. Leftists and collectivists have a lot of entrenched and embedded power in this country, and they're not going to give it up without a fight. That is for certain. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.